Hundreds of millions of people eat fast food every day without giving it much thought. They just unwrap their hamburgers and dig in. An hour or so later, when the burgers are all gone and wrappers were tossed in the bin, the whole meal has already been forgotten. New research shows that during the global financial crisis, workers who stayed in the jobs didn't reduce their working hours. Despite claims that cuts in hours have to prevent job losses, the study found that life of people who remained same employers stayed relatively unchanged. A thesis is a claim that you can argue for or against. It should be something that you can present persuasively and clearly. The scope of your paper, so keep in mind that page count. If possible, your thesis should be somewhat original. A thesis is a claim that you can argue for or against. It should be something that you can present persuasively and clearly. The scope of your paper, so keep in mind that page count. If possible, Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war power to emancipate the slaves was caused by the escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity. A thesis is a claim that you can argue for or against. It should be something that you can present persuasively and clearly. The scope of your paper, so keep in mind that page count. If possible, your thesis should be somewhat original. Two sisters were at the dinner party when the conversation turned to upbringing. The elder sister started to say that her parents have been very strict and that she had been rather frightened of them. Her sister, younger by 2 years, interrupted in. "What are you talking about?" she said. "Our parents were very lenient." There is a tendency, especially in the popular press, to concentrate on the negative effect of immigration. In that context, this lecture listing the benefits it brings to more developed nations is much more welcome. Also, it is delivered in a lively and amusing style. Today, telecommunication is widespread and devices that assist the progress are common in many parts of the world. There is also a vast array of networks that connect these devices, including computer, telephone, and cable networks. Computer communication across the internet, such as email and instant messaging, is just one of many examples of telecommunication. The fact is that those different types of services affect many different dimensions of well-being of people, and define the human well-being is also extremely challenging. However, we identified that there are certain items provide basic material for life, whether it be food, shelter, or happiness. Business school admissions officers said the new drive to attract younger students was in part the result of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their applicant pool by requiring several years' work experience. Talented students who might otherwise have gone to business school instead opted for a law or policy degree because they were intimidated by the expectation of work experience.
Nature offers no greater splendor than the starry sky on a clear, dark night. Silent and jeweled with the constellations of ancient myth and legend, the night sky has inspired wonder throughout the ages, a wonder that leads our imaginations far from the confines of earth and the pace of the present day and out into the distant reaches of space and cosmic time itself. Legal writing is usually less discursive than writing in other humanities subjects, and precision is more important than variety. Sentence structure should not be too complex. It is usually unnecessary to make extensive use of adjectives or adverbs, and consistency of terms is often required. A pharmacist's duty is not simply preparing the drugs which are prescribed by a general practitioner or other health professional. It is to deliver optimal pharmaceutical care by assessing the suitability of the medication for a particular patient, taking into account their medical history as well as possible side effects and interactions with other drugs that are being used. As to the Industrial Revolution, one cannot dispute today the fact that it has succeeded in inaugurating in a number of countries a level of mass prosperity which was undreamt of in the days preceding the Industrial Revolution. But on the immediate impact of Industrial Revolution, there were substantial divergences among writers. The situation is similar to a pregnant woman that has twin babies in her belly, says Avi Loeb of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He's proposing the idea in a paper that's been accepted for publication in the astrophysical journal Letters. First discovered in 2007, fast radio bursts continue to defy explanation. These cosmic chirps last a thousandth of a second. The characteristics of the radio pulses suggested that they came from galaxies billions of light years away. However, new work points to a much closer origin flaring star within our own galaxy. First discovered in 2007, fast radio bursts continue to defy explanation. These cosmic chirps last a thousandth of a second. The characteristics of the radio pulses suggested that they came from galaxies billions of light years away. However, new work points to a much closer origin flaring star within our own galaxy. The development of easy-to-use statistical software like SPSS has changed the way statistics is being taught and learned. Students can make transformations of variables, create graphs of distributions of variables, and select among statistical analysis all at the click of a button. However, even with these advancements, students sometimes still find statistics to be an arduous task. The development of easy-to-use statistical software like SPSS has changed the way statistics is being taught and learned. Students can make transformations of variables, create graphs of distributions of variables, and select among statistical analysis all at the click of a button. However, even with these advancements, students sometimes still find statistics to be an arduous task. One of the unidentifiable objects in this study lies just outside Centaurus A NGC 5128, an elliptical galaxy located about 13 million light-years from Earth. The other is in a globular cluster of stars located just outside NGC 4636, another elliptical galaxy located 47 million light-years from Earth in the constellation Virgo. In 2005, donor countries agreed on an accord to harmonize their practices. Since then, aid officials have complained that too little has changed on the ground. Conferences of donors in developing countries still tend to be dominated by a small group of North European governments, with the US often absent. The climate for doing business improved in Egypt more than in any other country last year, according to a global study that revealed a wave of company-oriented reforms across the Middle East. The World Bank rankings, which look at business regulations, also showed that the pace of business reforms in Eastern Europe was overtaking East Asia. The coastal wetlands have environmental and economic importance. Wetlands provide natural wealth. They have important filtering capabilities. As the runoff water passes, they retain excess nutrients and some pollutants. They maintain water flow during dry periods. Thousands of people depend on groundwater for drinking. They act as natural sponges of floodwaters and contain soil erosion. They control floods and save the buildings from collapsing during heavy rains. In a genuine republic, the will of the government is dependent on the will of the society, and the will of the society is dependent on the reason of the society. In Federalist 51, for example, James Madison claimed that the extent and the structure of the government of the United States make it dependent on the will of the society. The primary application we're targeting at first is to give people a decision aid during rehabilitation following an acute knee injury to help them understand when they can perform particular activities and when they can move to different intensities of particular activities. A useful thing to take crack at. Such an agreement would include recognition that the world must aim as soon as possible to hold global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, a long-term low-carbon future, 5-year updated action plans that recognize the developing climate reality, and aid to those countries that did little to cause climate change but are most at risk from it. Written examinations are a fact of life for most high school and university students. However, recent studies have shown that this traditional form of assessment may not be an accurate indicator of academic performance. Tests have shown that many students experience anxiety during exam weeks, which leads to poorer results. As a result, some learning institutions are replacing exams with alternative assessments such as group work and oral presentations. Analysts were impressed by the improvement in margins reported across all regions apart from the United Kingdom and said that this reflected a clear effort to improve profitability across the business. Although the turnaround is still in its early stages and the valuation looks full, given the challenge of turning around such a large and complex business, this is certainly an impressive start. The core of the problem was the immense disparity between the country's productive capacity and the ability of people to consume. Great innovations in productive techniques during and after the war raised the output of industry beyond the purchasing capacity of U.S. farmers and earners. The core of the problem was the immense disparity between the country's productive capacity and the ability of people to consume. Great innovations in productive techniques during and after the war raised the output of industry beyond the purchasing capacity of U.S. farmers and earners.